better at self-advertising, too. This is where I'm not going to do it. Oh, I'm scared for the website that's going to erupt out of this.
From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy, real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm back from my Arizona vacation and have some fresh ideas for expanding the pod therapy business. And at this time, I'd like to officially announce that Jim and I are moving to Sedona to open up our brand new Pod Therapy Crystals
Swinger Resort. Oh, Crystal
store.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
And now, broadcasting from the Churn, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangent. It's time for some pod therapy.
So how was Sedona? Is that where you went?
Well, we went to the Grand Canyon first.
That's not Sedona.
It's not. That's true.
Okay.
Thanks for playing along.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to the Grand Canyon. It was awesome. My first time there.
Big old hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big old hole in the ground.
Yep. And then stayed at Flagstaff, so that was fun. Then went down to Sedona for a day.
How was Flagstaff? Probably really cool, right?
Yeah.
That's like Mount Charleston weather, isn't it?
Kind of. I mean, it was like 80s.
Okay, but
So
yeah, it's 115 here.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's the first time you've ever been to Grand Canyon.
It was. Yeah.
Oh, neat. Have
Yeah.
you ever been to Zion?
No, haven't done that either. I've not really left the house
Yeah.
a whole lot.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
do things.
Well, actually, what had happened was we were just getting stir crazy.
yeah.
And I felt like, so Laura likes to take a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
And so she was showing me all these pictures, and all of these pictures are just of me sitting on the couch. And so that was kind of a wake-up call for me.
Zooms in. Each frame is just
yeah,
a little
so
bit
I'm
closer. And you're like,
I'm like, yeah, I seem to be kind of wearing a spot here on this sofa, so we should probably get out of the house. And so we're like, well, we can go to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
You know, as long as we social distance and everything. I mean, it's a huge space.
Yeah.
I mean, we should be
Outdoors.
fine.
Yeah.
So we did that. Went to the Grand Canyon and all that. It was fun.
Great.
Yeah.
So I went to Grand Canyon last year, and it was in February, so it's very cold. And it's still nice, but like, you know, foggy because of the weather and stuff, so it's really hard to see anything. But
also, the rim of the Grand Canyon is high. I
Yeah,
think the rim
yeah,
is around
yeah.
10,000 feet.
Yeah. But actually, I think while you were in Grand Canyon, I was at Bryce Canyon. And from the little model that they showed in the visitor center, it looks like that's all one big, like, slanting, like, plateau where the Grand Canyon's, like, lower, and then Bryce Canyon or Zion is on the upper side. There's a whole other thing called, like, the staircase. It's pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. But yeah, cool. Bryce Canyon's a trip, man. That's pretty wild.
We all did naturey stuff.
What did you do?
I was in Great Basin. We went camping up in Great Basin.
Yeah. Didn't you do the truck camping thing?
Well, we were going to do that, but then the truck tent didn't come in. And so we got a regular tent, which ended up being good because we needed the truck to drive up to different trails and stuff.
Yeah. That way you don't have to haul it all out of there.
Right.
So how did the weather end up panning out?
It was nice. It was very nice.
Could you sleep outdoors in that, though?
It was wonderful at night, and as soon as the sun would come up, it was just very hot inside the tent. So the sun would come up, and I would get out of the tent and get in a hammock.
Okay. Yeah. That's
the way to do it.
They need to start air conditioning the outdoors. It's unpleasant.
Well, our friends that went with us, they had a little fan in their tent. They had a little battery-powered fan in their tent, which made their tent perfect.
Yeah,
but we didn't have a fan.
You got to have something.
We had the vents. So if there was a breeze going, it was great. But it was absolutely perfect at night. It was in the 50s at night.
Man, you could see stars really good.
Oh, you could see the whole Milky Way. You could see like the swirls and everything.
Dang it.
And it was during a meteor shower.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So it was so nice.
Great Basin.
Cool.
Great Basin. Yeah.
How far out is that?
5.5 hours.
Oh wow.
Ish.
Oh, it's out there. Is that Nevada?
It is. It's right on the Utah border, though. It's northeast Nevada. And literally, from where we were camping, it's like a 15-minute drive to the Utah border.
Oh, wow. Jeez, I've never even heard of Great Basin.
No, it's funny because we were just with some friends. We went up to Mount Charleston. And they were talking about Great Basin, too. And they're like, oh, yeah, you need to get up there.
Catching on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that Jacob can advertise for a worthy cause that doesn't hurt anybody. Everybody should go to Great Basin. That sounds lovely. Vote Great Basin.
You're not bitter about that,
No, it's fine. No, I think that's great.
Well,
Great Basin.
Our patrons will know exactly what Jim is referring to because Jacob's working very hard to sabotage Jim's efforts at
at everything.
Yeah, pretty much everything. Life.
It doesn't matter. Oh, Jim, are you going to bet on March Madness? How can we up the ante here to ruin everything?
I mean, not to say that Jacob's life didn't have purpose before, but it definitely has purpose now. Like, without a doubt.
It's a more fun purpose.
Yeah. This is the only reason I'm rooting for the Las Vegas economy to get busy again. It's like, so now I just need Jacob to get distracted by
right
something
now I'm
else.
Just bored.
Absinthe has been closed. So his entire
Absinthe
focus.
calls him. Hey, some private guy just bought out all the seats, and apparently he's asking us to start working 5 shows a week. I don't know what the deal is here.
He just wants sound.
There's no need for anybody else.
Just wants to listen to the music in the venue.
Just run the sound. He's at 3 shows a day. It's very serious. So we've got a question here, which, seems appropriate. It's about assisted suicide. Last night, I asked my girlfriend of only a few weeks what her biggest fears in life were, and I was shocked to learn that what she shared with me. She explained that 2020 has been absolutely catastrophic for her so far. More on that below. And she has been struggling with the idea of planning an assisted suicide, with her entire family and loved ones knowing the day and everything. She wants to have like a big hoorah year where she uses all of her life savings to travel and do everything she has always wanted to do. And then on her 31st birthday in December of 2021, she wants to go out on her own terms. She has gone as far as sitting down with all family members and very close friends to discuss this plan with them and tell them her feelings. She told me that about half of them are on board with her plan, and the other half, of course, are against it. For context, in 2016, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which has drastically changed her life forever. This leaves her immunocompromised and on tons of medicine to keep life normal. At the present moment, she feels as healthy as she can be here. Her last relationship ended with her being cheated on, and she was devastated. This led to her moving back in with her parents for now, which has presented its own tension as family usually does, since she doesn't technically have a room in the home anymore. She contracted COVID-19 in the first week of March, and was one of the extreme cases that took 3 months of intense treatment to cure the normal symptoms of COVID, plus a head-to-toe full-body rash of blisters and irritated skin. The pictures are akin to that of a full-body burn victim, and has left her with some scarring all over her body, where the rash was particularly bad. Then she was furloughed from her job in April, leaving her stressed that at any moment she could be completely laid off, which would mean she would lose her health insurance, which is critical to her in order to maintain treatment of her MS, which costs about $200,000 a year without insurance. Because of her diagnosis with MS and how horrible 2020 has been, she absolutely does not fear death and has, in a sense, already given up and is welcome to it whenever it comes. As the newest person in her life, I don't know what to do other than show her compassion and love and prove to her that life is worth living and it's much better with her in it. She does see a therapist, but she is so confident and logical about this that I'm not sure it's a form of depression or whatever, so much as it is her doing the math, as it were, and deciding that the answer is suicide once she is content. Sorry for the super long email. Any advice would be appreciated. FYITF, Anonymous.
Yeah. Oh, that's a heavy one.
Yikes.
She said how old? She wants to do this when she's how old?
31.
31st birthday.
Which is next year.
I mean, the first paragraph, explaining how terrible 2020 has been, I get that. And I hear this a lot from people, talking about how this year has just been absolutely terrible.
Right.
But it seems like we hear that about every year.
Right.
And I think we just, it's kind of become, if we focus on all the terrible things that have happened, yes, this year's terrible. Right. This year in particular is worse than most
year.
Because it's
and the writer's girlfriend had a horrible year.
Right.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and from her perspective. So if we were just talking with that first paragraph, my thoughts automatically are like, okay, well, we need to change our perspective on stuff, and we need to start looking at some more positive things. All of this started making a little bit more sense with the context piece that was added with the history of medical issues.
Right.
And that has always been kind of a difficult thing to look at as far as assisted suicide because of medical reasons.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody has a chronic condition that is going to end their life at some point, and it's just going to be completely unbearable, and there is no cure.
Yeah.
I kind of get that. And
Right.
it's hard to, give uplifting feedback on like, hey, it'll get better, work it out when you have a medical condition that, for all we know right now, is not going to get better.
Right.
I don't know a whole lot about MS.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of talk about this with any kind of
I'll unpack that a little bit. So I have had patients similar to this, where they do have multiple sclerosis. MS is a degenerative neurological disease that causes a lot of lifelong problems, and it starts in a very gentle way. Gentle, I guess, comparatively. It isn't an all-at-once kind of disease. It's a slow and progressing disease that lasts your lifetime. It causes pain, neurological pain all over your body. It eventually can result in the loss of, motor skills, movement, memory, cognitive functioning. It's a slow, bad way to go. And it isn't terminal necessarily. It isn't like MS is a cause of death, but a person could eventually die from it because of the immunocompromising that also happens. They're very likely to get sick from a lot of other things. And at 31 or 30 years old for this person, it's a pretty negative diagnosis. And so that's the thing where this person is hearing that and saying, so what do I have to look forward to? And the docs are probably saying, well, it's not a straight shot trajectory here, but this is what MS does. Like, this is what it looks like down the road. It can be a slow winding trail. And it isn't immediately visual to a lot of people. So like, they'll just think you're a girl in a coffee shop. But then this is what's going on. And so it's a really, really tricky thing to deal with. And it's patients who are dealing with that that I've had at some points in my career that have brought this up and have asked about that, assisted suicide. So there's obviously let's speak about the technicality of assisted suicide for a second, and then we'll give advice to the writer, because we're talking about the technicality of MS. Let's talk about the technicality of assisted suicide. So some people ask us about this from time to time and say, hey, what is that? What is euthanasia? What is this idea that a person could be brought to a gentle death? That does exist. It's not, I don't believe, legal in all 50 states. There are some states that permit it. The process for pursuing that is, I think, a pretty intelligent one. And that process is usually that you have to have a diagnosis that reaches a certain level that is, something considered terminal or very extreme. And it has to be verified by, I think it's like 2 or 3 different independent physicians. The prognosis has to look bad. And then there is something that's involved where there is a therapy component or, an evaluation by a psychologist to basically do what that writer's talking about, which is to say, hey, is this depression? Does this meet criteria for depression? Are we indulging somebody's depressive fantasy right now? Or are they abusing substances? Are they not mentally sound? Like, is there a reason why we can't trust them to make this decision in a coherent way? Once that's been screened, in some states, a person can proceed with that. And a lot of people have heard of Dr. Kevorkian, this person that, is jokingly called Dr. Death and, I think was really mocked. If you really look into Kevorkian's work, I'm not going to defend the guy because he's also a big personality, but he was trying to make an argument, a philosophical argument, which is, do we believe that human beings ought to have the right over this choice? And it's a very complicated one.
Right.
And I think as mental health people, we get drug into it a lot because people will say, obviously this person's not mentally well. If they want to end their own life, stop them, therapists. And they want us to, point the finger and say, they're not mentally sound, don't let them do this. And it's a very tricky situation because, boy, you got to thread that needle, but you also want to give them autonomy. You want to give them the power to choose their own fate. And you have to respect what they're looking at here. And in this particular context, it does sound very severe. But you'll also occasionally hear this as like, I lost my job. I want my family to have the life insurance. I'm considering suicide. And like, obviously in that context as a therapist, all the alarm bells go off and you go, no. Like, no. But in this context, I'm willing to say to the writer, this sounds super duper complex. It sounds super duper difficult. And I I'll tell you that a little bit of advice. I'll kick it back over and get the room feedback here. But I'll tell you, to the writer, A, this is a new relationship to you. B, you're hearing somebody's thoughts about where things are standing in their life right now. They're talking about setting a date in the future. They're talking about trying to live the best days that they can because their diagnosis seems to imply that down the road they won't have as much function. So they're talking about trying to live a good 30th year or whatever. And there's room for this conversation. What posture do I want you in as the boyfriend or girlfriend? You didn't identify. I guess I want you to be in a position of encourager, supporter, listener. Don't feel like you have to challenge everything they say. It's okay to just let them unpack it and talk about death and talk about why they want to die and talk about how discouraged they are. And you don't have to debate them. And there's a huge temptation to do that. Yeah. Huge temptation to say, no, it isn't that bad. And don't worry, it'll get better. And there's a vaccine on the way. And who knows? I just saw this Israeli scientists are working on something for MS right now. There's a lot of temptation to do that.
That's where I would fail.
It would be, you'd want to debate them.
Yeah.
Nick can't help but talk about Israeli scientists.
I cannot.
It always comes up with Laura. It's weird.
Yeah, it's
that's my go-to. But don't do it, writer. I just want you to give the person permission to express without feeling like you're a voter or a decider. You're not. You never were. You never will be. If a person is in that kind of frame of reference, that's a decision they will make with their family, their next of kin, and their healthcare providers. You can just be close to it.
You brought up life insurance. Yeah. You mentioned life insurance, and that's a big one. All of that stuff is big. So there are 10 states that allow some form of assisted suicide.
I didn't think it was that many.
Yep, they are. California, Colorado, D.C. So I guess there are 9 states plus D.C. Hawaii, Montana, Maine, which just started this year. So just started January of this year. New Jersey, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington.
Yeah.
And it looks like Montana was the first.
Oh, wow.
The first to make it legal. What's interesting is I'm looking at all of them here. Most of them, if not all of them, I haven't gotten through all of them yet. Most of them, if not all of them, require you to be terminally ill.
Yes.
With multiple doctors, and several of them, they require multiple doctor statements saying that they believe you have less than 6 months to live already.
Right. Yeah. So there's definitely a standard that goes with it. Now, all that being said, writer, we're latching on to the phrase you're using, which is assisted suicide. And so we're assuming that she's talking about going the legit way with this. Right. And so obviously our advice about the nuances of this process and just educating you about that might not be worth a whole hell of a lot if she says, no, here's how I'm going to go. I'm going to take a boat out in the middle of the ocean and sink it, or whatever. Okay, you obviously don't have the ability to stop that person. Though, in theory, if they're stating that and it gets closer to the day, a family member could blow the whistle and have her legally committed too. So I guess I don't want you to get into the nuances of how to stop this, right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't think that that's a healthy place for you. I just want you to be a person who can hear it and hold another human being's truth. What is a therapist going to do in this situation, writer? If that's my patient, I'm just hearing her. I am just hearing her. And when she's saying, Jim, this is what I want to do, I'm not saying, well, you're wrong, well, you're depressed. I'm saying, I thank you for trusting me with your truth. Let's look at it together. I might ask clarifying questions. I might just try to understand her feelings. If I see areas where she's not thinking super clearly, I will earn the right to point those out, and I'll do it in a super gentle way. But I'm not necessarily going to confront her about the decision. If she said, Jim, will you sign off on the paperwork? I'll say no. And that's my personal decision as a clinician. Go find somebody else to do that. I just won't. But I'd be happy to be a part of your journey and chronicle these end years as you go through this.
So the other part to this, because there's the part that the writer's asking how, any advice on how I can support her, what I can do with this relationship. The other piece to this, too, that is worth examining is how do you take care of yourself?
Yes.
From the writer's perspective, if I was in this boat, this new relationship, and all of this fell on me, that's a lot.
Yes.
And then I know how my mind works is I'm going to try to go into savior mode and see okay, well, I got to try to pull this person out of this. I got to do all this. And so I'm just getting more and more invested into the outcome here. And I don't, I don't know as if that would be effective, but
Yes.
Taking a look at what steps you need to do to kind of care for yourself going through all of this would be really difficult to have to go through.
That's one of the most important things. And I think that, writer, this is something where I really want to encourage you where your self-care is. Are you talking to a therapist yourself? Are you doing anything that looks like self-care? Because it's very easy in this kind of a situation to just be sucked into it. And to be sucked into it in this way that all of a sudden you can't let go of that person. You feel like their ups and downs are really affecting you. You feel like you have to champion their cause. You're scared to ever be unhappy in the relationship because they have so much despair already and they have so much that's not going right in their life. And so you could feel like, oh my gosh, I'm trapped, and it can become really unhealthy for you. And I want you, writer, to have space to say, hey, I'm pissed off at my new relationship. My girlfriend's selfish, or hey, she didn't say hi to me when I got home. That was mean. I just want you to be allowed to express that and to be in your truth without this gigantic, existential reality that's looming over you. There's a really interesting movie that I think played with this exact question that's happening in this. And it was called Love and Other Drugs. It was released in 2010, and I remember seeing this. It's with Jake Gyllenhaal and Anne Hathaway, and in it he's like a farmer rep. He's a neat guy. He's really charming, and he woos this girl, and they start dating, and then they discover that she has a very serious illness, and it might have even been MS in the movie, and he goes through this process of attaching to her and not wanting to give up, but also along for the ride of this very difficult thing. And there was a very powerful scene in the movie where there's a support group, and she's in the room in the support group, and he is there, and then he steps out, and there's a man whose wife is also in the support group, and the man's getting a cup of coffee in the hallway. And Jake Gyllenhaal walks up to him and chats with him for a second, and he says, so how long you been doing this? And the guy's like, 20 years. And he goes, wow. He goes, do you have any advice for me? And the man looks at him and he says, leave her. He says,
wow.
Leave her. Go find a healthy girl. You're a young, healthy man, and you could very easily be guilting yourself into attaching to something, and then it gets really complicated. And obviously it was a moment where that man was not cast as a bad man in the conversation. Right. He was you see his pain.
Yeah.
And and Jake Gyllenhaal in the movie, I remember, is going through this process of trying to understand what to do because he genuinely loves her, but also this is a very complex thing. And writer, I don't want you to feel like a bad person for thinking about that, for discussing that with a therapist. Obviously, that's something you discuss privately, but if you were dating a girl who was a Marine in the military and she was going to deploy for a long time or could be killed at any moment or whatever, you're allowed to say, hey, your life situation affects my emotions and determines whether or not this is a viable relationship for me. The same thing is allowed to be true with things like this.
And I was going to say that too in a different sense, but kind of, for the writer, because we don't know what kind of mental state the writer's in, mental and emotional state, what they're going through. But it might be a good idea for the writer to actually get some help and seek some therapy because it sometimes is also the case where people who have been hurt get drawn into these relationships and kind of get stuck in these relationships, not because or maybe because they have genuine feelings, or also they could have genuine feelings for this person and this is their way of kind of trying to heal themselves.
Yes.
So you go through a terrible breakup or a terrible relationship, and then you get thrown into this one, and for whatever reason, that kind of becomes your therapy. Me helping this person is how I deal with my own stuff, which doesn't work out well.
Yes.
Right?
Good point.
So you need to, if you're going to be in a relationship like this, you have to be mentally and emotionally healthy.
Yes.
And if you're trying to fix yourself by being in this relationship, that's setting up for something potentially very harmful.
I agree. And so, writer, I think, number one, self-care buddy, or whoever you are. Self-care, making sure that you have a person that you're talking through this with, that you're experiencing your truth, that you're not feeling censored or limited or too attached that you've got to rescue or be a savior in the situation. If you're asking for just plain advice of how can I interact with my significant other, I think my advice to you is to just be a listener, be a receiver of truth. Don't always be a challenger of it. Create a safe space for her to explore those feelings. Carl Rogers, in my opinion, one of the greatest psychologists to ever live, basically had a theory of psychology and psychotherapy which said, humans can self-correct. And, like, you don't necessarily always have to be the person smashing through their door and offering them hot truth. Like, you can just allow them to sort of, like, stack all the puzzle pieces in front of you. And if you're there witnessing them put them back together again, more often than not, humans will tend to lean toward congruence, what he called congruence, which is to say they tend to self-heal.
Right.
But they do need a conscious observer through that process sometimes because it brings out a higher self.
Yes.
And so that's okay to just receive her truth. Don't necessarily feel like you have to debate it.
Yep.
Great question.
Yeah. Great advice.
Yeah. And practice that self-care, Ryder, because that's a big one. And, you know, we definitely feel for your girlfriend. She's going through a lot. I think it's also important that she has a fuller story of things. There are MS support groups out there. I would strongly encourage, if she's not already a part of that, to consider it. Sometimes it's hard to do because you don't want to hear the sad stories of others. But there's a lot of good literature out there, and I'm a big fan of that kind of support. I think that's very important.
Definitely.
Thanks for writing in. And please feel free to let us know updates about the story as it develops.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to discuss checking in on friends. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Robert Brownie Jr. Mintz. Today's trivia question in honor of Robert is, we're actually going to do Therapy's first ever 80s movie trivia.
Oh, I'm going to kill this.
Oh, no, you won't. I guarantee you will. I guarantee that you think you will.
Oh, yeah.
So I will read you the tagline and the plot summary.
Okay.
And see if you can identify this 80s movie.
Go ahead. Back to the Future 2.
Tagline, no.
Karate Kid. Done.
Break the sound barrier, break the speed barrier. That's the tagline. The plot summary. A young pilot plans a rescue mission when his father, an Air Force colonel, is shot down over enemy territory and captured.
Hot Shots.
No.
Top Gun.
No.
That's not Top Gun.
If you'd like to join Robert Brownie Jr. Mintz and make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com.
Is it a good movie?
Therapy. It's the best movie.
Oh, come on.
Is it Hot Shots Part 2?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
It is not.
Okay.
I don't even know if that was 80s. I think that was
I think it might have been
early
early
90s.
90s, yeah.
Charlie Sheen. That was a good bit. Okay, so 80s movie. The pilot goes to save his dad, who's
shot down over enemy territory.
Behind enemy lines.
Somebody's screaming it right now.
With Owen Wilson.
No, that's not even close.
Probably 2000s.
Yeah, you're like 2 decades off. Okay, when did this release?
2001, A Space Odyssey.
He nailed it. 1984. Final answer.
It came out in 1986.
Okay.
It stars a bunch of people that you've never heard of.
Okay,
good.
Great. We're off to a good start.
Except for Louis Gossett Jr.,
who
plays the role of Chappie.
Oh. I remember this movie.
Short Circuit.
I could not tell you what it's called, though.
All right, give us the answer. What is it?
Iron Eagle.
Oh.
I love that movie. I watched that so many times as a kid.
Yeah.
Such a great
Remember
movie.
we were talking the other day about movies that you watch over and over and over again?
Yeah.
Mine's Apollo 13.
Yeah.
And I just did it again this week. I made my son watch it for the first time, too. He's 10.
I was actually watching Cobra Kai.
Oh, okay.
And
the YouTube thing?
Yeah. And he's watching Iron Eagle.
Yeah.
And like it comes up several times throughout the show. And now it's like, I want to watch it so bad. But no one has it.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Oh, it's so good.
Iron Eagle.
Yeah.
Well, if the Illuminati and Freemasons haven't taken it off the shelves, maybe I'll be able to find it.
I think they have, actually.
Yeah, see, it's one more thing.
I can't find it.
Checking in on friends. Hey, in these unprecedented times, I've been making a concerted effort to check in on my friends, an exercise that does not come naturally to me. In reaching out to my friends who are therapists, I've found that universally, when I ask them how they're doing, they immediately flip it around to check on me. I'm never sure how to redirect them without it turning into an interrogation. Do you have any suggestions? Ulrike! Or Ulrika. Ulrike.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
All of them. All of them were correct.
They're all right. Yeah, it's like the multiverse theory.
I love that you don't put any effort into actually trying to figure out how to pronounce it.
I've literally pulled up YouTube videos. Only Laura can just do it. Laura walked in and just like, bam, just nails it. You and I and Jacob, not so much.
No. Yeah. So I think this is actually, I don't know if this is a therapist thing or not, but I think we all kind of do it.
Yeah.
Like when somebody asks us how we're doing, we're usually, yeah, whatever. How are you doing?
Right.
You know,
yeah.
It's very, very quick deflection.
I do think it's a therapist thing.
Probably.
I've noticed it even among other therapists.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a therapist in my office once that I actually challenged to be more honest with me. But I also had to check on that because that's the thing is like,
yes,
I think a lot of us, we want to invite another person to be vulnerable and to unzip and let all of that out of their chest. But that might not be safe for them to do. And if you can't be there long term to kind of help them clean up that mess, they might not want to release all that. You know, if you ask somebody, how are you doing? They could say, I'm fine, how are you? Or they could say, my grandfather just died and I'm a wreck. Well, oops, now you just got hooked into a longer conversation that maybe you weren't trying to have, you know, so I think it's hard for everybody to just necessarily do that.
I think you also don't want to get caught up, like she said, in interrogation mode, and you don't want to become that person's therapist.
Sure.
For me, I kind of respect their decision to not disclose what they don't want to disclose.
Sure.
In the sense that, you know, if I ask, you know, how are you doing? If it's like something that's visible, like I can visibly see that something's going on,
sure,
maybe I'll press a little harder.
Yeah.
It's like, you sure? Because I'm kind of seeing this. And then I kind of give them like, hey, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about it? If they say no, then I'm going to respect that. All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody like that, you know, ask how they're doing and I don't really suspect anything, I'm not going to keep pushing them. Right. Because I've been in that situation too. I've been on the other end of that where someone's asked me and literally I'm fine.
Right.
But they keep like they want to like,
really?
No, this is my moment to show you that I can be supportive and that I care. So come up with a problem so that I can help you with it.
Sure.
And I'm just kind of like, no, I'm really,
I've seen
it
go that way. Yeah.
That's probably more of an extreme case.
I think it is. But like, I am guilty of this, first off. Like, this, I absolutely do this.
No.
All the time. All the time. And I'm really guilty of it, you know. Yeah. So
well, you're not going to win any awards with that.
Yeah. I better go find the best life coach in Las Vegas to help me. But no, I'm super guilty of this. And it's been brought to my attention before that people have said, hey, Jim, like, oh, God, I can't tell you how many times I've had people say, hey, Jim, don't talk to me like a therapist, please.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm not your patient. I am not on your couch right now. I am your peer, or I am your friend, or I am a person who listens to your show. I think of you as just a human being.
Or I'm just the guy selling you this Kit Kat.
I'm just here to fix your garbage disposal.
Yeah. I just want you to talk to me like a real person, please, and don't sanitize it. Don't constantly deflect and constantly bring it back to me. So I have had people say that. I've had close friends say that to me, and one of them actually challenged me once and was like, "Yeah, you did it again." And his whole family was in the room. They all laughed and like, "Yeah, he did." And I was like, "I did what?" And they said, "You went into therapist voice." And his like, at the time, like 12 or 13-year-old daughter even said, "Yeah, I heard it too."
Oh yeah.
On the drive here, we brought that up that you do that sometimes.
Yeah, you do have a very obvious therapist voice.
I guess. But so I empathize with the writer on this one.
It's a little like Terry Gross.
Yeah. It is. Tell me more. What is an RJ? Yeah. So I feel like I definitely do that. I tend to deflect. I think that what the writer's asking here is like, hey, when that's going on, is that a therapist thing? And what can you do for that? In my opinion, I think it is a therapist thing. I think that we do tend to deflect, in part because we are actually trained to do that. Like, it's very natural in our work with patients, and it's hard to... It's not like we walk into a clean room and all of a sudden we're in surgery mode. You know, like, no, it looks a lot like a normal conversation at a coffee shop when you're doing therapy. The more natural we can make that, the better it is. And so it's very normal in that kind of context for a patient on the couch to say, so Jim, you know, I heard about your grandfather passing. I listen to your podcast sometimes. I'm really sorry, man. How are you? And, you know, I'm going to say, oh, thank you so much. Yeah, our family's doing a lot better. We're getting on. But if they go, no, Jim, really, man, I care about you. How are you? Well, it's appropriate in that context for me to defer and to deflect and say, hey, no, sincerely, thank you. I hear the concern in your voice. I would let you know if I'm not doing okay, but, I'm actually doing great. Hey, how is your family doing through this? And I will immediately deflect and start asking questions. Hey, the other day you brought up something similar that you were going through. You're worried about your grandmother. Did that all turn out okay? And, hopefully I can get them back on track for themselves, right? The problem is, as a therapist, I absolutely do that. In my normal interactions with other people, there is maybe 2 people alive who can ask me directly, and I will tell them where I'm really at. One of them's in this room.
Oh, Jacob.
Hey, we got that relationship, man.
And that's why he's the best. That's why he's getting my vote. Apparently all of my votes.
Smartest thing you can do.
So it's pretty rare. So, right. I feel for the writer in this one. I'll tell you that if you're a friend of a therapist, it's tricky because I know for me, I sometimes don't feel like I get to be a real person. And sometimes that surprises me. I've had people that have reached out to me before and just tried to talk to me as a normal human being and treat me like a real person. And it's very hard for me to slip into that space and just be as genuine and vulnerable and real as I can be. It makes me very anxious to do that. And that's a Jim issue, but I honestly think it's also a therapist issue.
No.
I've seen it in other therapists anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think all you can do is just ask.
Yeah.
I wouldn't push back too hard. If they want to disclose that to you, then they will.
Don't
if
personalize
not, maybe,
it.
Yeah.
Don't personalize it. And that also doesn't mean don't not do it.
Right.
Because I think that I know for me, people will ask me how I'm doing, and if I demur or deflect too quickly, they'll take it as, oh, I just upset Jim. Don't ask. He doesn't want you to. Mm-hmm. And that isn't necessarily the case. It's nice that other humans ask, and I think the more that a person spends quality time interacting with you or asking about you, it gives you the sense that you can open up to them a little bit more. But, don't be discouraged by that, Ulrika. Don't look at that and say that you're annoying anybody. And don't ask yourself, should I ask further questions to help them open up? I tend to notice that it's not so much asking more questions. It's more following up with people in a routine kind of way. Just checking in with folks and being like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. How are you holding up? Oh, I'm great, thanks. Okay. Oh, and just, stay there a minute. And just say, oh, yeah, how did that other thing work out for you? Is that all? And if they just kind of keep it at a surface level, great. Walk away from it. Don't take it personally. And check in with them in the next cycle, and see how they're doing. But, yeah. And good for you for doing that and checking in with people. And I'm sorry that we therapists are fickle beings and difficult to be in social relationships with. We're weird.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I will absolutely just get aggravated if somebody pushes with me.
If they push too much.
Yeah.
Which,
hey, ask me. Great.
Yeah. But don't keep digging. Which, I think the writer also says, hey, I'm not doing that, but I don't want to do that. But I also don't want to just, I don't know, should I dig a little deeper? What should I do? What teaches the person that it's okay to share with me? I think it's frequency. I just think it's keep showing up. Even as therapists.
I mean, you could also you ask a question instead of asking another question, follow it up with a statement, a confirming statement. So, how are you doing? I'm doing fine. Okay.
Sounds like
if you don't buy that, then say, all right, well, I'm here if you want to talk, or follow that up with something that you're not challenging them further, but you're offering.
Yeah.
You could do it that too. Then it's not as confrontational. If you really feel like you need to go further.
Yeah. I mean, this is a general audience thing, not just specific to that question, but if you want to know, one day we should actually do this as an A block, is we should put on a clinic on how to get people to share, because there's an art to it. It's not just ask them and say, how are you feeling? I'm here if you want to talk. If therapists said that when people first sat down, it'd be that question and 45 minutes of silence.
Yeah.
How are you doing? Great. I'm here if you want to talk. Yeah. And scene. That'd be the end of it. So we have these techniques that we use to accidentally get people to start sharing without really seeming forceful about it, not seeming manipulative about it. It's warm, it's genuine, it's real. But also it gives people permission to open up. And it's, we don't ask questions. That's a big part of it. If we do, they're very leading questions. We tend to lead with statements. Nick, you seem very serious today. You having a good day? Well, you feel like you can't just say yes or no. You feel like now you have to share more to either refute or confirm what I just said. No, I'm having a great day. I went to the store. I had a coffee on the way here. It's a great day. It's a nice Sunday.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it now. Go ahead and
go ahead
Jesus.
And do that to me. Are we doing this with?
Go ahead.
So Jacob's just going to checkmate us.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Jacob, seem like you're having a good day today. How you been?
Good.
Wonderful.
That's exactly how I thought that was going to go. I don't know why you would expect anything different.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so that is kind of more of a closed-ended question.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's open-ended questions.
If you were really trying to, if Jacob walks into your therapy clinic, God help you.
You've made wrong decisions in your life.
Whatever you did to lead you to that moment.
I regret all of my life choices.
Jacob is like the Terminator. If he shows up at your door, you know what you did. But anyway, Ulrika, thank you, or Ulrike or Ulriki, whichever way. It's been a while. Thank you so much for caring about people. Thank you for caring about therapists. Thank you for caring about us. You sent me masks, and you're always a good friend to us online. And if I've ever been guilty of that, if you've ever reached out to me and said, "Hey, Jim, how you doing?" And if I'm like, "Great, bye," I'm sorry. Please don't take it personally. It just same problem a lot of therapists have is we don't tend to open up really well, which is ironic. And part of it's because we deal with it all the time, and so we don't necessarily want to burden other people with our stuff. And at any given moment, we might be, helping that person. And so it's always tricky, too, because anytime we really open up to another human being, that person is now off limits for us to really successfully treat in the future. And that's a problem for us sometimes.
Yeah.
It's even a problem for Nick and I. We talked about bringing in other professionals to be guests. And we've had to, think about that and think, well, we have to work with these colleagues in a lot of capacities, we have to be careful about what extra relationships we create with them, as colleagues. So same thing in regular life. It's a tricky game to be a therapist. It's easier to be a dentist. You could go golfing with your dentist and you could still have him be your dentist. I don't think you could do that with your therapist. You go out with your therapist and they're like, "Yeah, I've just really been struggling lately. I'm committing tax fraud." What? They can't share that with you, Your dentist, you wouldn't care. So great question, though. Thank you for being a human to other humans. And
I'm going to start sharing things like that at my dentist's office.
How you been doing? Oh, good. Just tax fraud. What? All right. We're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we are going to discuss when therapy goes wrong. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Kayla Lansbury. Today's second 80s movie trivia question in honor of TheraProducer Kayla is... Okay, here's the tagline. Who else can turn lasers into light shows, aircraft into armchairs, and high-tech into hijinks? Teenage geniuses deal with their abilities while developing a high-powered laser for a university project. When their professor intends to turn their work into a military weapon, they decide to ruin his plans.
Weird Science.
No.
All right.
But you're not far off.
Oh, wow.
Let's see.
Breakfast Club. Final answer.
There's that whole line of movies like that, Zapped and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. They're all going to have some really difficult name to remember.
Yeah.
Laser. Developed a laser. Professor wants... Okay, so let me ask you this. Is it like a college-y movie? Kind of like a Animal House kind of feel to it? Or like Revenge of the Nerds? Revenge of the Nerds!
No.
Oh.
God, you get so excited for wrong answers.
Just in case.
Jim just yells his... We've talked about this before. Yeah. Jim just yells his answers.
Yeah. Very passionate.
Say it again, but louder.
Yeah, you might get it right the second time. So, Hot Shots Part 2.
No.
It's not Short Circuit.
Okay.
See, I have a very limited...
You need me to give you a...
we're
going to give you a couple actors.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. William Atherton was in it.
Who the hell?
Okay, now you'll remember William Atherton from Ghostbusters. He was the guy from the EPA that tried to close him down.
Yeah.
Red hair, red beard.
That guy. Actually, I do remember that guy.
Yes.
I think.
Yes, Peck was his name.
Wow.
Also stars Val Kilmer.
And now I've heard of Val Kilmer.
Released in 1985.
Again, I can picture this movie. I could picture the VCR cover.
The very end of the movie. Oh, I don't want to give it away in case anybody wants to
Spoiler.
watch it.
Yeah. We don't want to accidentally give away those 30-year-old plot lines.
Such a great movie. Such a great movie.
Was it really?
Yes.
You've actually seen this one.
Oh, yeah.
And you do
love
think highly
movie.
of it.
Yes. I think very highly of this movie.
All right, what is it?
Real Genius.
You
guys are 0 for 2 today.
Yeah. Well, I'll be damned. When therapy goes wrong, such as pod therapy. Hello, guys. I've just discovered your podcast, and I'm finding it so helpful and entertaining, too. Thank you. I wondered if you would consider doing a podcast on what happens when therapy goes wrong and how to recover from that. I was in long-term therapy with a male therapist, and it became a sexual relationship. This continued for 2 years, and then he terminated the therapy and said he couldn't see me again. I'm really struggling with this and feel it was all my fault. Becky from the UK.
Okay. Good question.
Ooh. Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast on that.
Boy, yeah, we really could.
Okay, first off, I don't see that as being your fault.
No.
I see fault there.
Yeah, there's definitely fault.
There's fault. I don't see it's the fault of Becky.
I don't think it's yours.
Yeah. That is 100%. That's the therapist's job to maintain that, healthy boundaries in that relationship.
Yeah.
Because when people go into therapy, people are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Very vulnerable. And so I don't think you are responsible for that turning into a sexual relationship. Obviously everybody has some responsibility for their own behaviors, but I think in that particular situation where you're going into therapy, that therapist has had countless hours of ethics trainings.
Yeah.
And, how to establish good boundaries in relationships, healthy relationships, all of that. And for whatever reason, didn't use those in that situation.
What a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of you was trained to not sleep with the other.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah,
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
That's a good way
true.
to summarize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, Becky, my first response to that is, I think I just want to say to you that I am very sorry to hear that. And I am sorry that you must have a lot of complex feelings about that. It sounds like you care deeply for this person. You trusted this person deeply. This person was a genuine helper to you for years. And I don't want to look at that entire relationship and say that it was false. I don't think that you probably would perceive it that way. I think that you're sad for the loss. And I just want to acknowledge that to you and just tell you that I feel very sorry that you lost that person and that you went through that. I can only imagine what that is like, and that grieving process must be very difficult. And it is obviously very complicated because as you're describing it, you're saying, hey, this is therapy going wrong. That's not okay. It's not okay, Becky. We do consider that to be malpractice. That's not okay. It's unethical, and it's pretty obvious. I think all the listeners that are hearing the show, if you didn't know that, a healthcare provider of any type is very strongly restricted to be very careful with the way they interact with you. Most of you guys have heard about the Hippocratic Oath, which is 3 words, primum non nocere. It means first, do no harm. And that's like a concept that is turned into an entire ethical grid of guidelines. So your healthcare provider has to be really careful not to get into a financial relationship with you, like you're the landlord on their home and you lease it to them, because they have a position of power over you. And we don't want to accidentally ever manipulate that in a way that could hurt you. Same thing with a relationship. In Nevada, we follow the NBCC guidelines, and our guidelines say that a therapist cannot have a sexual...
Oh, not that NBC.
No, it's a different NBC. Yeah, not the NBC that's hiding all of my favorite skits. This is a different group. National Board of, I think, Clinical Counselors. But our board guidelines tell us that we are not allowed to have a romantic or physical relationship with a patient or any member of the patient's immediate family for 2 years after the date of last contact. And that is to ensure protection.
That seems sensible.
Yeah, very sensible.
Yeah.
Not a lot of therapists pushing back on that.
But it's tough to make a counter argument.
Yeah. No. They haven't shown up for 2 sessions. That's open season.
Go ahead and vocalize your counter argument there.
Go ahead and say it right into the mic in the board meeting too. Yeah.
Different disciplines have different regulations on that.
They do. Yeah.
Some it's lifetime.
Yes. Some it's lifetime ban. Some of them are very casual with it and will say, hey, if you want to date your patient, just transfer them. Just refer them out. And as long as they're not currently on your books and you have a termination session, well, no therapeutic discipline supports that. But like a dentist probably don't care. And so like different trades have different things. I've been speaking a lot for the dentist lately.
Yeah, you have.
But anyway.
How's your oral hygiene right
now?
Yeah,
I know, right?
Okay?
I'm just bitter.
You've been wearing that mask for the last 4
Nobody
months.
knows.
We really haven't seen
half
anything.
those teeth are gone. Half them. So the dentist, for some reason, won't take my business. I don't understand. Like, they just go, Jim, yeah, piss off, and they hang up.
It's just lollipops and no brushing. From
Yeah. It's 5 months. What am I going to do? That's how I cope. I've been doing all my sessions on Zoom. I have to worry what my brother
Jim
smells
won't
like.
go to the store even to buy a toothbrush.
No. You can Amazon that. Why would I? So anyway, Beth, I guess I just want to, Becky, sorry. I just want to resonate, I guess, as a professional. It is sad for me to hear that. I don't want to hear about other professionals doing that because I think it causes harm and it's not great.
And I do, on a serious note, very much empathize with what you're going through because you are the victim in this situation.
It's not
and
great.
that it's hurtful for two reasons. Because I mean, you lost two people in this situation. Now those two shouldn't have been the same person.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Yes.
This therapist could have been a great therapist, could have been a great romantic partner.
Right.
But the problem is you can't be both.
Yeah.
And there is a grieving in this, in Becky's situation, because she has lost both people. And that's a tragedy because it should never have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think I like your question, too, because it tees up us, to be able to speak to it in a bigger picture and say to everybody out there, if you do, see a therapist, first off, it's extremely rare that anybody who is so highly trained does really obvious unethical things. So I don't want you to out there be scared, that if you see a therapist or you're selecting a therapist, I don't want you to fear that things are going to go wrong. It is really not ordinary for things to go wrong. That's why it's newsworthy. That's why it's interesting. Okay. And that's why there's liability that sometimes is attached to that because it's so rare. So I don't want anybody to be discouraged. But in the situation, if you ever find yourself attracted to your therapist or and hopefully you find them to be somebody you enjoy, right? Because you are partnering with them. There is an intimacy. There is a vulnerability. But, it sometimes happens that you think to yourself, gosh, I really want to be pals with that person or hang out with them in the real world or, support them for Best of Las Vegas. And I think you should do that part. That one's fine. That's not unethical. But you probably want to be very careful about where the relationship goes. And so, again, Nick's right, Becky. You didn't do anything wrong here. We, as therapists, entirely look at the colleague and say, no matter what, you are the responsible party. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how things work in the UK, but here in America, that's our system. And we put the burden of responsibility on the professional. You were trained, you knew better, you had the ability to step back. Even if this person told you how they felt about you, you're highly trained to know what to do with that.
Yep, and that's probably why, I'm guessing, maybe that's why he stepped away completely. Because it probably was something that he knew, and he just finally had to act on it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't take that as a personal attack towards you.
Good point.
Guess is he probably just,
realized
he couldn't wrestle with
this
dichotomy anymore of I'm supposed to be a therapist, but I've done this. Yeah. I need to end it all.
Right.
So it probably had nothing to do with you. It's just him finally
good point.
Acting on his
very good point. Yeah, because at some point, and it's interesting because the last two questions have to do with the humanity of therapists. And we are, real humans. And there is, I was just telling a patient about this the other day that I had to put myself in check with this particular patient because I related to him too much. I enjoy his company so much, and it's starting to, in a very small 1% too much kind of way, I'm noticing it's getting a little too buddy-buddy. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I needed to kind of call myself onto the carpet and say, hey, I want to be a little bit more, serious with each other because I think I'm allowing it to get a little too playtime because we relate to each other. Yeah. We have similar personalities. And you bond, with your patient. You think, oh, this is a great friend. And you always have to come back to yourself and say, no, you can be friendly, but a friendship is a mutual relationship where each of us is giving and each of us is getting. I am here as an expert and a healthcare provider to join. I hope they find me personable. I hope they find me sincere and authentic. I hope they know that I sincerely and authentically like them. And I have to still create a boundary there too. Yeah.
So moving forward for Becky, two things I think need to happen. Number one, you're probably going to go through a grieving process.
Yes.
Because like you said, you lost somebody that was important to you.
Yes.
I think you're going to go through those natural steps. And I think the second thing is getting back into therapy to continue to address whatever it was that you would have been addressing in that therapy before. And I really hope that this didn't kind of spoil your opinion of therapy. I hope this wasn't your first experience in therapy so that you have other positive experiences to draw from.
Yes.
And I hope that when you get back into it that, it's going to be slow going because it's going to be different this time around. But hopefully you can slowly, allow yourself to become vulnerable again. And you're going to have to put a little trust in the therapist that they're not going to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
I would also, if it were me, I would go find a therapist that I was not attracted to. I would go find a therapist of a gender that I was not attracted to as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
Could be. Yeah. I
just so you don't even have to think about that part of it.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you don't have that concern that maybe I'll fall for this person or whatever. Like
there's room for that.
If you're not attracted to women, you'll find a female therapist.
Yeah, and I think in Becky's,
is what I would do.
In Becky's case specifically, I think that's probably good advice. I don't want the general audience to fear that you need to be scrutinizing.
No.
Yeah,
I'm only speaking about this
only
one,
that one.
This
person.
one case.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's because you already know that this is a vulnerability for you, and it might help to sort of create a barrier so that you don't ever fall into that trap again.
And just to help her get back into it.
Yeah.
And honestly, if she found a female therapist, assuming she's not bi and not attracted to females, if she found a female therapist, that female therapist may be able to help her go through the grieving process of losing this last person and hopefully be able to, form a different type of relationship with her based solely on that of a healthcare provider, maybe a little faster.
Yeah. One last kind of technical in the weeds note for Becky on talking to another therapist about this. If I had to bet, I think that any therapist you talk to about this is going to say, wow, I am stunned. I'm shocked. That's big news. And hopefully immediately get back to taking care of you as a patient and not in any way attaching to this conversation in a legal way. There are some therapists who are rookies, and I think that they would think, oh my God, I'm supposed to call a whistleblower and report this. No, you're not. You have a HIPAA protection to talk to just the patient. The fact that you're aware that somebody else may or may not have committed malfeasance is not in any way, shape, or form that therapist's responsibility to report. The harm belongs to the patient. The patient alone can make that call, and you shouldn't influence that call. Becky might say, no, I don't want to see the person destroyed. I don't want to do that. I'm just here to process it. So, Becky, the reason I bring that up is because I do think it might be appropriate if you do start a new relationship with a new therapist to just let them know, hey, I might not reveal the name of this person for a while, and I just want to be clear to you that I'm here to work on this on a personal level. I'm not looking for legal counsel, and I would just like to reiterate to you that I expect privacy. If I'm talking about your colleague and you know your colleague, and I've had that happen before, where people have said, and sometimes they show up very wounded, and they want to tell me all about a colleague that they thought was a terrible therapist, and they want to complain about them. And I'll usually tell them, hey, I totally want to hear about this because it matters to you. If you could you not tell me the name? And they'll be like, why? I want to tell you about it. Why don't you give them a fake name? Because I want to really hear your perspective. If I've met them in person, I don't want to accidentally disbelieve you. I want to really hear you. And, that's also because I don't want any pressure. I just want to be able to hear this, right? So anyway, Becky, that's more their responsibility than yours, but could be helpful in the new search for a therapist to just drop that on them and say, hey, I'm not going to give you the name because I don't want to tempt you to do anything stupid. Just attend to me. That's really what I'm here to do. I'm not looking for counsel, legal counsel, or otherwise. So some rookies would be tempted to do that.
Thanks for writing in, Becky, and we appreciate you, and thanks for being a new listener.
Yeah, and thanks for putting up with us, and thanks for keeping our show international out there in the University of Kentucky.
We just need one.
Yeah,
just need
UK, University of Kentucky.
Yeah. I was thinking, we just need
nation.
As long as we have just one person from the outside the United States, we're international.
Deep Southern accent. That's how I imagine Becky.
All right, let's move on.
Twanging a harmonica. That's what they do. That's what they do in the South.
They twang a harmonica.
Was it a mouth harp? Is that what it's called? Is that what you twang? What do you twang? Hey, we have some letters. We got one from Jeffrey A.
Some people call Jim dumb.
Some people call me Maurice.
Yeah. Those are the people that have met him.
Yeah.
Hello, guys. First and foremost, I wanted to pass along my deepest condolences to you, Jim, for your grandfather. I hope you and your family are doing well. Thanks, man.
That's nice.
Second, I wanted to say I took your advice and cut contact with my ex. Oh, this was the letter about the ex that like reached out and Jeff was like, "Hey, piss off." And so it says, second, I wanted...
This is one that Nick and I, as you read it,
we're
like,
no. Like biting your fist the whole time. Second, I wanted to say I took your advice and cut contact with my ex. To clarify, though, she didn't want me back romantically. She just wanted my friendship back. Either way, I was uninterested and held firm to my boundary. And lastly, when I mentioned my podcast, you asked me to tell you about it, and you'd give me a friendly shout-out. Well, it's called the TB&J Podcast. That's TB && J Podcast, all one word on podcast. And my friends and I discuss films and TV. We recently wrapped up...
I hope they discuss 80s movies.
I'm sure they do. If they're a reputable podcast.
How many episodes do you have just on Iron Eagle?
Yeah.
If it's less than 3, I'm not listening.
Yeah. Of course. Or they wouldn't be taken seriously as film critics. We recently wrapped up a look back at Firefly. God, what a great series. And have begun looking at The Boys from Amazon Prime. Spoiler, it's a really good show. Thank you both again for all your help and guidance, and I look forward to ScoopFest 2021 in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. Until next time, Jeff Ackerman, The Scoops of War.
Thanks, Jeff.
That was a great letter. We actually got a couple of letters. I'll read one more. This one is titled Lady Porn Done Right. Hi, guys. I think the former supporter may have missed the mark when criticizing the discussion with women watching porn. It was refreshing not to have all the usual negativity associated with the topic. Just like drugs and alcohol, watching porn can be addictive and harmful, but the difference is when women watch porn in a healthy sense, there is a stigma or shame attached to it. No one admits to it, and it is never discussed among women. Thanks for keeping it positive anyway. Anonymous. Thank you
for the feedback.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. And this next one is a little bit long.
We got time.
I'll run through it. All right. Pre-qualified for a PhD? This one was funny. Hi, guys. In episode 133, Radish asked about becoming a therapist after acquiring a bachelor's degree in economics. I got the same degree, economics, from an Ontario university at the turn of the millennium, and a few years ago got my master's in elementary education from a college in the U.S. To my surprise, last year I got an email from the college stating I was pre-qualified for the program of, quote, Doctor of Clinical Psychology, Psy-D, to be eligible for positions such as private practice psychologist, public sector clinical psychologist, and forensic psychologist, end quote. I wrote back stating that I have never...
psychologist.
You got pre-qualified? I wrote back stating that I've never taken a psychology course in my life, so I'm not sure how I pre-qualified. And the response was simply, it is possible if you have interest. God, that sounds so mafia. In my humblest
Liberty
opinion,
University.
Hey, we got rid of that guy. Did you hear about it?
I did.
Falwell is out. Yeah.
Falwell fell well. He's gone. No mas. In my humblest opinion, I offer two ways of looking at this. One, if you have the willpower, time, and can afford the tuition, few degrees are out of your reach. Two, some degrees and institutions will prepare students to pass any and all certification exams where specific terminology, theories, and history are explored. But the practicum is where you're prepared for the job. At least it seemed that way for the teacher's college. My view may be skewed. Best of luck with any and all future endeavors. Cheers. Coffee Maple Scoop. That was a good one. So
there's a PS.
Oh, there's PS. PS, I'm stuck in Dr. Jim's figurative Barstow space as one of many out-of-work supply teachers, and every once in a while listen back to episode 100 from December 5th, where Nick mentioned that my lifestyle currently is very unstable. Oh, how I yearn for the instability of the time before COVID.
And there's a PSS.
Regarding the light bulb question, why do you need a room? You have 3 phones. I assume they all have light bulbs. Why doesn't Jacob just turn one on and have the other host try to figure out which one was on? Cheers, Maple Coffee Scoop.
Because that's not how we do it in America.
We build these things, okay? We build the entire room, light bulbs put in, electricians are notified, and we run experiments.
Exactly.
Science. So, yeah, good luck with your
Why
pre-qualified
would electricians
degree.
just be notified?
They must be notified in triplicate. We will be turning on lights at 0100 on this
I'm
day.
confused by the notification.
We've had a couple weeks off, so we got some new folks who we want to identify. We got a new THERAPAL, Andrew Langmead.
Nice.
Thank you for joining.
Welcome to our new THERAPOD, Nuzzo 11.
Jim, favorite Nuzzo, 11 or 12?
Oh, God.
Definitely 11, right?
I think 11, yeah. But I hear 13 is going to blow us all away.
Yeah.
Also, a new pterodactyl, Ivan Elsa. Welcome to the flock. And we want to thank our bosses, the Elite Eight, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the THERAPRODUCERs. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Kayla Lansbury, Ellie O'Dare, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Dawn, and ex officio board member Crazy Banana Scoop, and Gray Whitaker.
If you would like to hear this episode in uncut and unedited and enjoy our spontaneous side projects, go to patreon.com/therapy. And thank you for supporting mental health.
That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, which is in no way, shape, or form affiliated with mental health clinics and should not be in any way endorsed on bestoflasvegas.com. And thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share this episode with someone who needs it by opening the episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided in your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter @PodTherapyGuys, and now at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm the best of Las Vegas therapist, Jim Jobin.
And that's the bestest of Las Vegas audio guy, Jacob. Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Oh, I'm terrified. I'm terrified of all this.
VOLV.com.